And now, it's time for another Dice Tower review with the Game Boy Geek.
Hello my friends, it's the Game Boy Geek here. A while back, I reviewed a game from Academy Games called 1775 Rebellion. Now, this is the only war game that I've actually kept in my collection because I really love it. I love the history of it. I love the rulebook, went into such detail. But since then, just recently, they have just developed in partnership with Rosen Classroom a teaching manual, Teaching the American Revolution Through Play. It is a 5-week or 5-lesson course for high school students that uses the game itself to teach. Now this is really interesting to me. Let's take a look at the book. I'm going to show you how this is constructed and what they'll learn. So let's take a look inside, shall we? So we have the table of contents, which again, this is a 5-week course, goes through the different lessons, the 5 different lessons in the table of contents. And then at the beginning, it talks about relearning history and how to, the importance of war games and things like that. Just sort of an intro of a play-based approach to the American Revolution, kind of gives you a summary of what things are going to be happening. So in lesson 1, which is week 1, obviously we start diving right into history, but with this, the first week, you actually talk a little bit about the phases of games play and how the game's played. So you dive right into the gameplay right away in the first week with the students with this book. Unlike some of the other books they have done, it just depends on what felt best for the people making this book. So you go over the different phases of the games, teach them how things work, and then of course you can modify the game it has you do with 2 to 4 players discussing playing moves for each faction if you have not enough games for a larger class. And you go through different vocabulary, so you're learning Hessians and mercenaries and militia and things like that. And then through guided practice, you review how armies are moved. So you can talk about that from the game perspective. Then you have students play at least a few turns, depending on the time available. And then there's some narratives, some writing activities for the first week. So many of the soldiers kept diaries. Write 3 to 5 brief entries in a diary format that tell the story of a soldier in one of the units of the game. So that's really cool. They've played it a little bit, and now they're writing like what a diary entry would be. And I love this. Modern conflicts are fought as much on Twitter as the battlefield. Write 10 short tweets that might have been sent by either a patriot or loyal militiaman. I like how they're bringing that new wave of kids learning through Twitter and stuff like that. What would these guys be tweeting about? I think that's really interesting. So the first is a good introductory lesson. Lesson 2, we start going on to the different acts. So taxation without representation. So we learn about the French and Indian War, the taxation without representation, the Sugar Act, the Currency Act, the Quartering Act, the Stamp Act. A lot of reading here, a lot of learning. The Townsend Act, and then during the Tea Act, and we learned those different vocabularies, and we read the examination of Dr. Franklin. You'll see at the end here, they have a primary source document that will be used to study this. So in here, there's other sources as well they have you read, and they have you do read and some practice and discussion questions. But here, they assign students to 5 small groups, and each of them act So they review the board to discover the colonies as they were as the Revolutionary War, and they have to develop a PowerPoint presentation onto why it might have impacted the different colonies differently. You also, in writing activities, write a letter to a family member telling them about the act. So you'd pick one of these acts after you've studied it, and you'd write a letter to the family member. Now there's some extra activities you can do, but then here is that main source. Now the source here is that questionnaire from basically the interview with Benjamin Franklin. It has, I think, the whole thing here. Now there's also a place online that you can go on and you can download this for all the people, so you can print it out. The teacher can print out a copy of this for everybody. So then we get to lesson 3, and more historical information on protests turned violent, and we talk about intolerable acts and the Continental Congress. Again, more questions and more vocabulary. So here's the primary source document here about the Boston Massacre. So they'll be reading and learning about that. There's different other reading lessons that happen in this week. So we read and discuss them, and we learn about the Sons of Liberty and what about the Boston Massacre. And would the Boston Tea Party be such a decisive factor in the movement toward Britain had not taken action it did? So it's reading and learning through this, with the game as sort of the context of it all. Writing activity. Describe a YouTube video that might have appeared if such technology was invented at times. So we're going to be talking about a colonist standing next to one of the people shot and killed killed at the Boston Massacre, and what would the YouTube video look like? And some further research. So yeah, we talk about all these different things. And again, teachingthroughgames.com is where you can get all the extra information. And here we're also developing a PowerPoint presentation to write an essay on your findings between the Boston Massacre and other things. And you're doing that on the colonial view and the British view. So interesting things there. And then there's obviously, that's the big document that they will study that time. Again, it will get printed out for the people. Lesson 4 here, more historical information. So the war before the Declaration, the shot heard around the world. We learn about the Second Continental Congress, the invasion of Canada. We're choosing sides, the Loyalists and the Patriots in America. And then we start to get into playing a little bit more. So we played the first lesson, and then we learned for lesson 2 and 3. Lesson 4, we get back to playing. We actually played the Siege of Quebec scenario for 1775 Rebellion. Now, in the rules for 1775 Rebellion, there is the Siege of Quebec scenario. So it's a specific 2-player game for experienced players, essentially. You're setting up the scenario. The setup has some additional things to set up in addition to the normal setup. You do certain things with the cards, you put certain cubes, and it tells you how to set this up here. And it's another scenario that we'll be doing with the class. Now back to the book. So yeah, these rules differ slightly as I showed you. So you'll need to control cities by having units in a region with the city. So there's some slight rule differences, but it has you play this because that's what we're learning about. And so, the white and yellow cubes are the Loyalists and the Patriots. And we tell them to review all the cards, including the pictures of the cards, for some insights and facts about the militia. And then we break them up into small groups to summarize the findings of the classwork and read conclusions about the Loyalists and the Patriots. Now, there's some writing activities. So 2 colonists have been long-term friends at the local general store. One is a loyalist and the other is an independent. Write a dialogue that might take place that develops the strong feelings of each and the reasons for those feelings. So those 2 guys are hanging out. They're from the different sides. And so how does that conversation go? And then over here we have students identify 10 important details to know about the war before the Declaration of Independence. So that's basically the 4th one. And in the 5th one here, Independence declared and gained. So we have lots of historical information. Talk about the British counterattack. We talk about the foreign troops and the war by proxy. The Yorktown and the end of the war. The Treaty of Paris and the aftermath. Okay, so why might revolution end in independence and why not? An essential question that they'll be answering. There's a suggested reading source here, Alphabet for Little Masters and Misses. It's an interesting, it was from the early part of 1775 and was afterward reprinted in the Constitutional Gazette, this piece here. So they'll read about this and they'll be asking some questions about it. So after reading, discussing what groups brought to support both sides of the conflict, why might the Native American group be considered more volatile than the other 2 groups? Because those are actually in the game, which is interesting. And choose the role of a Hessian soldier or French soldier. Write a letter home to your family telling you what you're doing and why and how you feel about your actions. So that's the 5 weeks in a nutshell. There's notes, there's appendices, and of course there's a place you can go online to get more information, and then it has some things there. And that is the basics of how this is constructed for teaching the American Revolutionary through play. All right, well, there's the book. I am really excited about this because I love the teaching abilities in games. I'm always looking for teachable moments. I love bringing games to kids. I love bringing games to friends and teaching them different things. I've even started, creating my own courses to be developed for games like probabilities and negotiations and things like that. So I really love teaching through games. So this is huge to me. The course is awesome, and there's a whole slew of books. I think there's 5 of them from this specific publisher by the same authors that for different games and different things to learn. This is about the Revolution, of course, and I thought it was really good. They actually, in this specific one, they had you dive in right at the beginning in the first lesson of learning how the game works, because you're looking at the board, you look at the map, you look at the colonies, you're seeing how armies move, and you're starting to even do some moves right off the bat. And then you're learning about those. And I really like the interactive lessons that they have here, where they're saying what would this soldier tweet about if he was in this spot, or make a YouTube video of this guy standing next to this guy at the Boston Massacre. What would it look like? And write a letter home to someone as a loyalist talking to somebody else, or you did an interview with a loyalist and a revolutionary, and what was said on each side. And lots of interactive reading and writing along with playing. And so 2 of the lessons are actually doing the playing. One of them uses that special Quebec, the Siege of Quebec scenario. So it's cool. 40% of the lessons, they're actually hands-on playing the game, and the rest they're learning a lot. So I'm a huge fan of this. I think it's awesome. Geez, if you homeschool your kids, this would be an awesome thing to do if you're a gamer or you like this game. Even if you don't, this is a great game to do that with. And if you're in a school, in a public school, contact the publisher. I think they have ways of linking this to certain standards and such. All in all, a really good idea, well executed, a 5-week or 5-day, 5-session type of course. I'd like to see even more in this. They've done 5 books now. I'm doing another review for Freedom Underground Railroad. But man, to teach games along with this, with the historical readings and the writings, very, very impressed here. This is something you're gonna want to check out if you want to teach anything historically through the game. Now, the rulebook itself has a lot of history. I remember when I reviewed the game, I had forgotten the Hessians were orange and they helped out, you know, the British side, and the French helped out the US side. I had forgotten all that from school, and I learned that just from the rulebook. So the rulebook had a lot of good stuff in it too, but man, this just takes it to the next level, learning through play about the American Revolution.
Thanks so much for watching the Dice Tower videos. Find more great videos and reviews, as well as our top-rated audio podcast at Dicetower.com. You can also find other great shows at Dicetowernetwork.com. I'm Eric Summerer, and you've been watching The Dice Tower. The Dice Tower is sponsored by Cool Stuff Inc., where you can find great games for great prices. Cool stuff in stock. Check them out at CoolStuffInc.com.